So Anita, the theme of this year's International Women's Day is about breaking the bias. And I was just wondering if you could reflect on your life, be that at school, college or your career, and just let us know whether you've experienced any bias over that time.
I suppose school's a good place to start, isn't it? Because I remember going to my careers teacher and saying, "Oh, I want to be a teacher. I want to be," and she said, "I think you should become a traffic warden." And I thought, "Oh, okay." And now I'm not sure why that was. Was that because maybe they needed more people of colour who had, coming up? Maybe they did need more women, but it was just a strange thing to be told.
Oh,
Perhaps I
odd.
should become a traffic warden. I obviously didn't.
Yeah.
But so I think schools are really important, and that's just one lighter incident, but it's stuck in my mind saying, no, I'm not going to be a traffic warden. I want to be what I want to be. I want to be a teacher, and I did train as a teacher. So I think throughout my life there have been steps of that. And actually, going on to university, I was at a teacher training college, which is part of the university here. The majority of the students were women training to be teachers. We didn't have a creche, so one of my first campaigns as an 18-year-old was to try and fight for a creche. So it's all about, there are the subtleties. It's about making things available for women so that they can have an equal chance at either following a career or getting a job. And I think that's always been the kind of bias I've hit. And then there was some really obvious bias when I got to the BBC. And also bias that comes within our own community, because on television I was one of, I did some broadcasting and on an Asian programme, and I was the first Asian woman on a programme that was called Nae Zindagi Nae Jeevan, that was in Hindustani. And I was there speaking, as a young thing, speaking in English and not wearing any Asian clothes. And the letters that came to the BBC then saying, take this woman, take this girl off the screen. She doesn't speak Hindustani and she doesn't wear our clothes.
Really?
So bias, it hits you from all angles, and sometimes where you don't expect it. And of course, from the community I came from, the fact that my parents, they were fairly liberal and I could go and do education, etc. There were some communities that just didn't, some women who couldn't have that, some girls who couldn't have that. So I was very lucky that my parents didn't stand in the way.
Well, I think having your parents behind you is so important, and that it really is. I mean, I think of myself as very fortunate. I don't feel like I've experienced a lot of overt bias during my career, but there's certainly been a lot of meetings and kind of one-to-one sessions where I felt really uncomfortable and being made to feel that because of my gender, or actually because of my age, but not necessarily now, but when I kind of started out, and people thinking I was too young to be in a position where they needed to listen to me, for example.
Yeah.
And certainly in the economic development field, I remember sitting in some meetings and being the only woman in a meeting room and actually feeling that I didn't belong there and I wasn't given the right amount of respect for it. And I think, looking back, I just wish I'd been a bit more confident that I was meant to be there. I was there on merit. I was there because my role meant I should be there, rather than just feeling like I should be shrinking back into the corner because I didn't seem to fit in and conform with what could sometimes be quite a testosterone-fueled environment.
It's almost that imposter feeling, should I be here? And I wish I had said that to my younger self, to say, yes, of course, you should be there. And actually, you need to be there, because if you're not there, who's going to be there? And I remember when I became a bi-media correspondent, one of the first in the BBC out in the regions, and I joined the newsroom, and going to that newsroom, all the senior posts were held by men. We had one producer, and that was it. And I remember after my first week, because I went in as a woman and a woman of colour and on a brief and by media, which wasn't heard of in those days. After my first week, I went to the editor and said, I don't think I can hack this. I think I'm going to leave. And he said to me, well, if you don't, who's going to stay and hack it? So, there have been people who have been very supportive and said, hang on, are you really making a good choice? And I think the fact that it makes you question so much. And this feeling, well, is it me? Is it me that's the problem? Well, it isn't me that's the problem. It isn't you that's the problem. It is actually some of the systems and also some deep stereotypes that still exist that create some of the bias and the barriers.
I think that's absolutely right. And I remember when I first kind of started my career and looking up at, you know, the females who were in those positions of leadership and thinking, actually, my personality is nothing like theirs. You know, a lot of them took on what you might say were more stereotypical male characteristics, and whether that was how they genuinely were or what they thought they needed to do, it just felt a million miles away from the sort of way I felt comfortable in being. And for quite some time I thought, actually, I'm not going to get very far in work, but that's fine, I'll do bits and the rest of it. And it was only through meeting some really inspiring female leaders that were very different to that I actually realised you can be a strong and very good leader, but a very different sort of leader and an authentic one as well. And I particularly remembered a lady, an older lady, very small, diminutive, who was a vicar in Handsworth, I think, around the time of the riots. And actually the presence that she had and what she did in the riots and her leadership role, even though she's very softly spoken and very calm, just really stuck with me, because I was thinking, actually, you can do this and be yourself. And now I know that, you know, leadership is much, much better when you're authentic anyway. And, you know, we need all sorts of leaders in this world. So you can succeed if you want to, if you're just following your own natural characteristic traits.
Absolutely. And I think all of us who kind of make it in our careers have a real responsibility to make sure that we don't pull the ladder up, that we facilitate. And I've been very fortunate. I've had some really lovely women who I've worked with, and the woman who gave me my first radio job at the BBC was very persistent. I said at first, no, I can't do this. And she said, yes, you can. And it's great. And I still remember and I still see her, and it's incredible that one movement, that one bit of confidence from her helped me motor ahead. And I hope in my career I've helped others to do that, and I'm sure you have. But the boardrooms still need to be cracked. I mean, if you look at national boardrooms, we've got big issues about women representation, but we've got to start somewhere. And some of that has got to be about thinking about getting those extra skills, because you can't go into a situation naked of skills, but we shouldn't have to feel that we've got to have more skills than anybody else. We may have different skills, and I think that's great. This bag of skills that we all have different skills. Bag of skills we have. We shouldn't be ashamed of what's in our bag of skills.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's about having the confidence that those skills are required. And also, I genuinely believe the old adage is right in terms of a different way men and women can look at roles. You know, men might see, I can do 50% of the role, therefore I'll go for it. Some men, not all. But then some women will have the absolute opposite to that and say, there's no way I can bridge that gap. And I think, you know, that might be putting off some people, some women going for board positions as well, because they feel they've not got the experience, or they haven't got the right skill set, or there is that gap there from what they perceive to be required of a non-exec director. And I think we need to really try to push through that still, because you absolutely need that, as you said, mix of skills from men and women from different backgrounds at the top of organisations and throughout it to get the most, I think, of what can be achieved.
Yeah, and I think the skills that you talk about, you can grow, you can learn some of them, but some of them are instinct as well. Yeah. So we shouldn't be frightened of our instinct to say, I can go in there and have that conversation. I'm bringing into it me, my authentic self into that conversation. That's really important.
Because I've often find the management teams I've seen that have been the least effective is when they've had too many people with very similar skill sets, because they just clash. Whereas if you've got a good mixture, they're much more likely to be successful, I think.
I think there's a Chinese saying that women hold up half the sky. I made a documentary called that once, yet we still don't have that 50% or close by representing in big companies. And I think companies shouldn't be frightened of saying, you know, we want to make sure that we have a good representation, put systems in place. But women shouldn't feel that if there are those systems in place, shouldn't feel second grade, that I'm here only because there's a system that existed. We are there because we've got the skills to be there.
Absolutely, and we just need the right support around to enable it to happen, really. I mean, I certainly think you're right in terms of it being critical that we all kind of walk the walk as well on this and do what we can wherever we are in our lives and careers to support others. Because I look back and seeing, you know, I was fortunate to have a couple of male champions working for the City Council who over different periods of time who really saw potential in me and helped me to develop and to grow, both by working closely with them but also through various courses and things I went on that actually really provided a big stepping stone for me. Interestingly, it's not always been the same with some of the female bosses for me. It's, you know, so I think it's all, you know, I think it's very much incumbent on all of us to be giving those steps up to colleagues, be it male or be it female or male, actually, to do our bit and help sort of mentor and grow the next generation coming through.
Absolutely, and we shouldn't be frightened of saying that you know, women are mothers, they're carers, as are men. But you know, we shouldn't be frightened of saying, well, no, actually, I don't want to go to the pub, or no, I've got other things to do. And I remember my BBC career, I couldn't talk about the fact that I was a mother, I had to go to school to pick up children, or they were sick. That conversation didn't happen because it was so male dominated. We've shifted a lot in those workspaces, but not for all women. And I think that still needs to, that culture that often exists needs to be broken down as well.
I actually think that's a positive from the pandemic in a sense. I think people have realised so much about, you know, personal lives and how that impacts on work, and I do get a feeling that some people are being much more open to the fact you've got, you know, childcare responsibilities or, you know, elderly parent responsibilities and things, and are kind of open to understanding that and being a bit more appreciative that, you know, you've got to get that balance.
You know, as we celebrate International Women's Day, it's really important that we remain authentic, true to ourselves and determined, and see how we can support each other.
That's absolutely true, and I think we also need to really call out the bias wherever we might see it as well, and do something to address it and push things forward even more.